All right. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes. Am I muted?
You're not now, but I think you were a minute ago. I could see that you were muted. You can also give me a thumbs up, or you guys can write in the chat box, but I want to make sure everybody's hearing me okay. Here comes Natalie. Yes, good, good. Hi, Kirsten. All right. So, hi, Elavie. Hi, Natalie. You want to give me a thumbs up or a yes if you can hear me fine? And then Natalie, I was just letting everybody know that I am recording, and if you had shared my post and wanted to be entered in for a chance to win half off a 6-month program, to write me in the chat box so that I have a list of everybody's names. I'm going to do that drawing tonight while we're on Zoom at the end of this call. Putting those names in now. All right, and in my experience, sometimes there's people who hop on 5-10 minutes late. So if that happens, I may repeat that message one more time. Thank you guys all so much for coming. I'm excited to talk to you. I have all this stuff written out and planned, all of this really awesome information and some sources to share. Going to share my screen a couple times as we go through some of this information. And towards the end, when we talk about birth control, I'm going to open up the conversation to you guys if anybody wants to share experiences or ask questions. I do ask that it be respectful, obviously, and considerate of everybody's differing situations. And I will also have time at the end to ask questions. And I'm going to just try to basically stay within an hour for the bulk of this information, and then kind of open up for Q&A and do the drawing for names at the very end. So let's go over the agenda. I'm going to first talk to you guys about the symptoms that you might experience if you have hormonal imbalance. Some of them are more drastic. Some of them are things that have been really normalized. And so people don't look at them any longer necessarily as being imbalances. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit more in-depth information about the 4 phases of your monthly cycle when you are menstruating and going through a regular cycle each month. Kind of the nuances of how your energy, moods, stamina change week to week and what those hormonal fluctuations are. There's a lot of info in this, so hopefully you guys have a pen and paper if you like to take notes of important stuff that you want to remember. And then we're going to go into the 5 most common lifestyle events or triggers that might trigger that hormonal imbalance. And then really good stuff will be 5 lifestyle habits to start implementing to support hormonal balance rather, and then we'll go into the birth control. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So symptoms of hormonal imbalance. Here's one that's pretty normalized, just PMS in general. If our bodies are doing a really good job of balancing hormones and detoxing them from your body in a timely manner, you really shouldn't experience terrible PMS symptoms, a little bit of lower energy and maybe a little bit more cravings for food towards the end of your cycle. But as far as really intense or cravings that you can't control, or really bad mood swings close to the end of your cycle, these things all indicate some hormonal imbalance. Really bad cramping or heavy bleeding, this is an indication that there's some hormonal imbalance. Cysts, whether on your ovaries or your uterus or your breasts, cysts are an indicator that there's hormonal imbalance. Chronic fatigue, as well as sudden weight gain, like a really sudden fast weight gain. That's a more severe symptom of hormonal imbalance. And then the more obvious and severe things would be actually diagnosed, PCOS or endometriosis or adenomyosis or infertility. And those are the much more serious things, or it would be wise to work with a doctor alongside someone similar to me or like me who specializes in working with people in regular habits for hormonal balance. So these are kind of the things that hormonal imbalance looks like. One of the things that's really specifically and bothers me the most, because it can be treated in such a way that is not root cause, like it's not looked at as hormonal imbalance, is this cyclical anxiety and mood swings where you feel normal and you feel good for about half of the month or for a week or two following your period. And then it starts to spiral into feeling like you're crazy or you have a lot of anxiety or like you're losing your mind even. And these are things that I've said in the past and things that I've heard a lot of my clients say. Almost all of these symptoms that I'm talking about are indicative of estrogen dominance specifically. And that means that your body is creating estrogen and not clearing it out of your system as quickly as you are creating it. And then it has a chance to hang around in your system longer than it should. And so now that we've kind of talked about the symptoms of hormonal imbalance, which is just basically anything throughout the month that makes you feel like you're totally exhausted or totally anxious, and it's changing with those weeks of the month, and bad PMS. These things indicate that your body is harboring too much estrogen. You can also think of estrogen, it feeds growth. So cysts, tumors, or things like endometriosis and adenomyosis are fed by estrogen, too much estrogen in the system. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you guys a little graph here. So let me change this view here, get it out of here so that that's not in the way. So if you guys can see my screen now, this is a chart that really shows what these three hormones that are really going to dictate your moods, energy, and stamina throughout the month, how they change. And it's each week they're changing. It's not black and white, like one day you are ovulating and then, well, that one is black and white, but it's not black and white, like one day you are in your follicular phase and then one day you are ovulating. It obviously all ebbs and flows, as you can see with this chart. And it's the combination of these three hormones that's going to determine how you feel. So estrogen, starting with an E, think of it like the energizing hormone. Estrogen starts to energize you. So right here, this red phase right here, where all of the hormones are at a baseline, phase one, this is your menstrual cycle. And when you are on your menstrual cycle and bleeding, all of your hormones come down to a baseline. Everything is resting. And after you've had your period, about day 3, 4, or 5, depending on you as a woman, your body starts to create estrogen. And you can see that after you've had your period, until about the time you ovulate, your body is creating estrogen really quickly. It's creating it more and more and more each day until about the day you ovulate, which I'll move this, you can see. These things are right in the way, aren't they? You can see that here about day 14 is when your estrogen peaks. So this is about the day you're ovulating, and estrogen peaks, and the other hormone that you can see is peaking is testosterone. So testosterone is often known as like the masculine hormone. Men make it every single day. They make all of their testosterone while they sleep at night. So they're loaded up in the morning, and then by the very end of the day, they're depleted of it. They go to sleep and they recreate it. That is men's hormonal cycle, to really simplified. And our hormonal cycle is we make testosterone for about a week surrounding ovulation. And so this is the time of the month when your hormones are on board to build muscle and burn fat. This is the time of the month that you're going to feel the most energized and the most quote unquote like yourself. But here is the thing. Your liver is in charge of converting hormones. Once a hormone has done its job in your body, your liver is intended to convert it from being fat soluble to being water soluble. Once it's water soluble, it can go into your large intestine and bind with the fiber in your diet and actually be eliminated from the body through a bowel movement. So that's something I never knew before, is that you actually have to eliminate hormones. Once they've done their job, they need to exit the body. And if your liver isn't functioning well, if your liver is congested, or if it's bogged down, or if it's working slowly, then it's not going to be moving hormones out as quickly as it should be. And if you noticed, what I said is that the liver converts them from being fat soluble to water soluble. So if your liver isn't converting these hormones, they are fat soluble in your body, which means your fat cells absorb them. We all have some fat cells, and fat cells are hormonally active. Fat is hormonally active tissue. So with a congested liver and this sharp rise in estrogen following your menstrual cycle, it's a perfect storm for estrogen dominance. Because look here at this chart, following ovulation, there is then a sharp drop in estrogen production and a rise in progesterone. If your liver's not working well, then you don't get this sharp drop in estrogen, because around the week of ovulation, your liver is still holding on to, fat cells are still holding on to that estrogen that you created in this first week or two of your cycle. And estrogen being energizing, it feels good to us in this first couple of weeks in combination with the right amounts of progesterone and testosterone. But as our hormones change and we get closer to the end of our cycle, if you still have more estrogen in your system than progesterone, that energy that did feel good starts to spiral into anxiety. It starts to spiral into too much energy that's not being balanced out properly by progesterone, because progesterone is the calming hormone. And some people talk about it like the pregnancy hormone. So you can think about the P being like a pregnancy hormone and the E being like an energy hormone, meaning that the progesterone has like a calming, nurturing, slow down, introverted, maybe nesting type effect to it. And it's not a negative thing. When your hormones are balanced during this end phase of your hormonal cycle, it's not like you should feel really exhausted or actually like you're pregnant, but this is in completion, this whole entire month, and all of these fluctuations that you see makes up the entirety of a woman's personality and her more creative and energetic side, as well as her more nurturing and calming and introverted side. And over the course of a month and our life, we are really intended to express ourselves fully through these beautiful cycles. So to kind of zoom out just a little bit more here, I've shown you this chart. I want to now talk briefly about the 3 systems within your body that are going to determine if your hormones look like this chart, which is kind of what a balanced cycle would look like, or if your lifestyle is going to cause all of these things to go haywire. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, come back over here, And we're going to talk a little bit about the blood sugar, the adrenals, and the organs of elimination, which is my favorite thing to talk about it. I talk about it all the time, over and over and over and over again. I feel like a parrot, but these are actually the systems that are going to determine how you feel and how your body can create and detox hormones from your body. So first is blood sugar. So eating for stable blood sugar, never had any idea that it was important if you didn't struggle with something like diabetes until I went through my nutrition school, as well as read all of these books about hormone balance and women's cycles. And basically with your blood sugar, there's a few things here. There's several things, and we're just going to kind of touch on it. The first thing is that overindulging in sugar and carbs, glucose of any form, having more than you need in any given moment is going to cause an insulin response within your body. And when you have an insulin response, this means that you have more glucose in your bloodstream than your body knows what to do with at the time. Your body excretes insulin. The insulin goes into your bloodstream, sweeps up all of the extra glucose, and carries it into your fat cells where it is intended to stay for long-term storage. This whole process is how your body keeps your blood sugar stable. When you constantly rely on your body, your pancreas, to keep your blood stable sugar, it ultimately stresses the body out and stresses the adrenals. These three systems, the blood sugar, adrenals, and organs of elimination, have a domino effect that causes hormonal imbalance. So the first one is almost always blood sugar that's mismanaged, either like what I just said, where you're overindulging and causing stress to the adrenals and overtaxing and burdening the liver, or the opposite, which is also so common in our culture, which is to skip meals or to go a really long time without eating and have low blood sugar. Whether that means you like to intermittent fast and every single day you wait to have your first meal until noon or 1 o'clock, which is very common, or maybe you have breakfast and then you're so busy all day that you don't eat for another 6 hours and then you have way too much food. And what you can see basically is that either overeating or undereating mismanages your blood sugar. Ultimately, it tires out your adrenal glands. So to then talk about the adrenal glands, your adrenal glands are in charge of making stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. This is not all that they're in charge of, and we're going to look a little bit more deeply at them. But what a lot of people don't realize is that cortisol is not all bad. We create cortisol in response to stress. But even just like this conversation right now is creating a little bit of stress on our systems for you guys to pay attention to the most important things I'm saying and try to write it down. And for me to pay attention and remember all of my bullet points. It's not a negative thing, but still to be focused and alert on a day-to-day basis, our adrenals need to be able to create cortisol. So if you're constantly like overstressed or not getting enough sleep or drinking tons of caffeine, which causes your adrenals to create extra cortisol, what happens is that mechanism wears out. The mechanism of creating cortisol, which has so many important functions, when overused, wears out. And then your body cannot make enough cortisol even to keep you focused and alert. But I want to talk about the adrenals a little bit more because they have some really important functions, and there is like taking care of your adrenals, you guys, is so important. So let me share my screen again, and we're going to come over here to this book excerpt right here. So this book excerpt is from Elisa Vitti's book, Woman Code, and I'm going to share these resources again at the very end of the call. So if you want to write them down, you can. But let's look at these 3 layers right here of the adrenals, because the adrenals are in charge of so many of your functions that make you feel good and that safeguard your health as you age. So the outermost layer, your adrenals have 3 layers, and your adrenals are a part of your endocrine system, the entire hormonal system within your body. And So the outermost, they sit on top of your kidneys. So just if that helps you to know where they are, they're on top of your kidneys, which are on top of your bladder. So they're also very close to your ovaries. So the outermost layer of your adrenal glands produces aldosterone, which helps regulate your blood pressure and protects the sodium potassium balance within each of your cells. And a lot of people don't think about this, but your individual cells are going to make up the health of you as a greater being. And so the sodium potassium balance within your cells, that's your cell's ability to receive hydration. So drink all the water in the world that you want, drink your body weight in water every single day. But if your adrenals are exhausted, you're not going to be able to fully absorb and hydrate with that water. The middle layer of your adrenals churns out cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which, yes, too much of it in the body can turn into a negative thing. But your body relies on a certain amount of it, like we just talked about, to be focused and alert and to maintain your circadian rhythms. And also, big one here, to mobilize your stored fat, protein, and carbs from your cells. So when you do overindulge in some carbs or sugar and your body stores it away as a survival mechanism to use later on, if your adrenals are exhausted, you can diet and you can restrict calories, but your body loses that ability to efficiently go in and use the stored nutrition in your cells. And then the innermost layer produces DHEA, which is the precursor to your androgens, your estrogen and your testosterone. So these are the hormones that, like we said, those are the hormones that peak around the time of ovulation. These are the hormones that give you that fat burning and muscle building. Endurance also gives you energy, protects your skeleton, boosts your libido, safeguards your mental health and cognitive function as you age. So all of this stuff really is wrapped up with your cognitive function and mental health. And then to come over here, this is a nice little picture of a person who is struggling with adrenal fatigue so that you can look at these symptoms. Feel free to take a picture of the screen if you'd like to be able to look at this again later. That kind of shows you what adrenal fatigue would look like in your body. Are you having a hard time, Kirsten? So tired but wired, poor sleep, opening, can't see the picture. Can none of you see the picture? Oh no, okay, I think I know why. Were you guys able to see the book? Okay, so I think that I know why. So let's just try that again. Now can you see it? Good, thank you. Thanks for letting me know. So you can look at this and kind of see these symptoms of what it actually looks and feels like in your body to have exhausted adrenal glands. So tired but wired, poor sleep, dark circles, cravings for salt, sweetened carbs, excessive sweating, cystic breasts, low stamina for stress, easily irritated. You guys can read, go ahead and take a minute and look over those things, skim all of those symptoms. Basically, with exhausted adrenal glands, every single function in your body slows down. And so everything feels tired. And in my past experience with having some adrenal fatigue and talking with clients who have it, it almost feels like a mild depression minus the sadness. So like feeling like, well, I'm not sad, nothing's really wrong, that I feel depressed. I'm lacking the vitality to do the things that I love. I'm not excited to wake up in the morning. I'm losing passion for the things that I love. And obviously, this can be something much greater than adrenal fatigue as well. But it's very much worth looking at if it could be adrenal fatigue in your life that's contributing to these types of feelings, and start with some of these simpler things that you can take care of. So to go to the back side of this paper, these are some really simplified solutions to adrenal fatigue, but we are going to talk about this in more depth here shortly. But basically, like I said, this adrenal fatigue is like a worn out mechanism. It's an overused mechanism. So in order to allow it to heal, you want to rest your adrenals. You want to give your adrenal glands a break from producing so much cortisol. So this recommends getting extra sleep, eliminating sugar and processed carbs, because again, just simply managing your blood sugar is one of the first things you can do to support your adrenal glands. Clean and whole foods, and curb the coffee habit. And I drink coffee. I've never completely quit. What I really find is that it's important for you to be honest with yourself and sensitive to the feelings that you experience in your own body, and not overdo it if you do drink coffee. And if you know that it's not realistic for you, or it's just not going to happen to quit, then try to get that to a level where you're not getting the jitters, you're not getting the shakes. And if you feel like you have adrenal fatigue, you kind of want to try to drink the bare minimum to get you by. I try to stick to 1 cup a day. That's me. I'm 5 foot tall. I'm a small person. 1 cup in the morning. And on some days when I need an extra boost, a 2nd cup. When I do more than that on a consistent basis, I feel myself having the opposite effect of what I'm trying to do. And over the course of several days, becoming more exhausted. And it's, again, you forcing your adrenals to output exhausts them when you're forcing them to output more than they are really intended to at that moment. So mismanaged blood sugar leads to adrenal fatigue. The two of these together, as I just kind of stated, leads to everything slowing down in the body. So many of the functions slowing down in the body and becoming depressed, including the detoxification processes. So the process of your liver converting hormones, toxins, any waste in your body that needs to be converted from fat soluble to water soluble. Your lymphatic system becomes sluggish. Your large intestine moves slower when in combination with a sluggish liver. And so it's just a perfect storm when these things are all not working together, the blood sugar, the adrenals, and then the organs of elimination slow down. And then all of these things happening together causes hormonal imbalance because your adrenals are tired. They can't do their job of giving you strong reproductive hormone function. Your liver is sluggish, so you're not detoxifying things as you should be. And then estrogen has a chance to hang around in your system and build up. And it turns into so many of these symptoms that we just talked about in the beginning: PMS, cystic breasts, this cyclical anxiety and mood swing situation, really heavy cramps, really heavy bleeding. And then what so often happens is people bring these symptoms to their doctor. And unfortunately, our Western medical system, the way that it works is we treat symptoms. That is just Western medicine. It's not an insult from me. We need Western medicine for so many reasons. It saves lives. It has saved my life. But if you're wanting to get to the root of hormonal imbalance, going to an OBGYN, you are going to probably be handed hormonal birth control, which we're going to get to towards the end of this. What hormonal birth control does is it changes that cycle of hormones that we just talked about. And we're not going to get into that quite yet. So today, we're talking about a lifestyle that supports all 3 of these systems so that your body can do what it's supposed to do, and you're not plagued every single month with feeling like a crazy person, because you shouldn't be, and not a single one of you is, even if you've ever had that feeling. So let's talk about 5 pretty common lifestyle factors or events that can trigger hormonal imbalance. And what we'll see from these things is that once hormonal imbalance is triggered, it can be hard to get back out of it unless you really know where to direct your focus. And it can turn into this enduring years and years long thing that plagues you. So the number one thing, well, and this isn't actually in a particular order, this is just the first thing on my list, is birth control can trigger hormonal imbalance. So I want to come back over for just a moment to this this chart here that shows these fluctuations in your cycle. So when you're on hormonal birth control, whether it's the pill or an IUD, the Paragard IUD does not release any hormones. So that is a form of birth control that you can take that's non-hormonal. So is the copper IUD. But as far as Mirena IUD, it releases a small amount of progestin, which is synthetic progesterone. And like the pill, also releases some synthetic and progesterone and estrogen. And what it does is it actually tricks your body into being in a perpetual luteal phase. So that's this phase here towards the end of the cycle where estrogen is lower, progesterone is dominant, and testosterone is also lower or non-existent. When you're taking these birth controls, this is unbiased, this is just factual information, you completely lose your follicular phase and your ovulatory phase. So it takes away these two parts of the cycle where you're creating estrogen on the rise and where you're creating more testosterone. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. So coming back over talking about the birth control, a lot of people get on birth control for reasons other than birth control. They'll get on it because of acne or because of these really bad mood swings or some of these different symptoms in your life that indicate estrogen dominance. So based on what I just said, when you take birth control, it brings your estrogen down and it tricks your body into doing that during the time that you're on the birth control. So it can feel like it has fixed the problem because it often gets rid of these symptoms that are caused by too much estrogen in the system. But we have to think our bodies are designed to do this cycle for about 30-ish years of our life. And then at the very end, kind of transition into menopause and stop cycling. And you have to also think about if you're taking this birth control and it's altering the way that your hormones produce to take away these symptoms, what happens then if you get off of the birth control? The issue is that whatever caused the hormonal imbalance in the first place, whether it was a congested liver or mismanaged blood sugar or tired adrenals, is still happening. It's still there. The underlying issue has not been fixed. So birth control is one thing that can trigger hormonal imbalance. If you get on it and then get off, it can be hard for your body to refigure out how to get into balance. Another thing, another factor that can trigger hormonal imbalance is an abnormal circadian rhythm. And it can be really subtle. These systems are very sensitive. And to talk about the liver a little bit, your liver actually has a circadian rhythm of its own and cleanses at about 3 a.m. But if you had like a bunch of food right before bed or a really big dinner late at night, your liver and your body is going to prioritize dealing with that. And your cleansing cycle is going to take the back burner. And so if you get really sensitive and pay attention to how you feel in the morning after going to bed on an empty stomach, and then notice how you feel in the morning after going to bed with lots of midnight snacks or a late heavy dinner. Notice how alert you feel, how clear in your mind you feel, and think about your liver. And if it had a chance to do its cleansing job at about 3 a.m., or if your body was doing other things. We have to think about our exposure to light and how we would live if we were in nature and if we were going back to basics, if we were hunter-gatherers. I'm in the worst example here in my office with absolutely no windows and this nice overhead light, but I'm not usually in here at 7:30 at night. But our skin and our eyes are like our solar panels, and they absorb the light that's around us. It triggers a process from our pineal gland that then cascades this effect through all of your glands in your endocrine system to produce hormones. Having a circadian rhythm where you're going to sleep at midnight or 1 a.m., waking up at 9, 10 a.m., or where you're going to bed at 10 or 11 and waking up at like 4 or 5 a.m., or if you're not getting enough sleep, basically, if you're not getting enough rest, your adrenal glands don't get a chance to rest, your liver doesn't get a chance to cleanse, and you make your hormones that regulate your appetite when you're sleeping. So not getting enough sleep, in my opinion, is like one of the worst things that you can do for your health. And as if you have a hard time sleeping, that is a whole nother topic. And that's something we cover in depth repeatedly in my 6-month program. And I'm constantly working with the clients who I do work with now on different lifestyle and habit little changes on their days to improve sleep quality. It's totally doable, but also between the hours of 10 and 6 a.m., that's the healthiest. So having a circadian rhythm that has been out of whack or abnormal for a long time, or even just slightly out of whack, can be something that triggers hormonal imbalance. Number 3 on this list is mismanaged blood sugar. Chronically mismanaged blood sugar, either through just a habit of overeating or a habit of skipping meals or skipping breakfast, can over time quickly tire out your adrenals and cause your hormones to go out of balance. It also contributes again to that liver congestion. Lack of exercise contributes here. So having a diet where you're not really necessarily aware of how to keep your blood sugar stable, which I'm going to give you guys some specific instructions for that before we're done, can be something that causes your hormones to go out of balance. Number 4, chronic stress output. And this is a huge one. Being chronically stressed or chronically pushing yourself to do more than you feel good about in your body is going to be a major trigger for hormonal imbalance, because your adrenals are in charge of making those reproductive hormones, estrogen and testosterone. If your adrenals are exhausted and not doing that, you're going to end up having some adrenal exhaustion. So you can see that these lifestyle triggers and events, what they all come down to is, again, the blood sugar, adrenals, and organs of elimination. It's these different things that are really normal in our American lifestyle that contribute to hormonal imbalance. And then the 5th one that I put on here, which is definitely going to be a contributor to hormonal imbalance, is having a pregnancy and a birth. And I think that a lot of the time, this is something that really gets women stuck. It is a huge demand on the body to create a baby and birth a baby. And in America, we often put the pressure on ourselves or other people to continue to keep up with our normal schedule, normal work, normal kids, meals, everything that we do on top of creating a baby. And it's a lot of stress on the adrenals. And then the other side of that is postpartum. Once a woman has had her baby, if she is not given proper time, proper nutrition for good healing, her adrenal glands and all of these systems are going to have such a hard time catching up. And add on top of that, sleepless nights with a new baby. And I see this a lot, that moms, with a few toddlers and little kids are so exhausted and being hard on themselves about why they can't lose weight. And I think that it's a time when you have young children and you're teaching them how to sleep. I think it's a really good time to be so gentle with yourself and easy on yourself and focus on the adrenals, just like getting as much rest as you can and allowing those adrenal glands to heal. That's going to be better for your hormonal production than pushing yourself to do a bunch of cardio every single week or skip meals to try to lose that weight. So those are 5 common triggers: birth control, a wacky circadian rhythm, chronically unstable blood sugar, so undereating and overeating, chronic stress output, and then a pregnancy and breastfeeding. These things can all trigger hormonal imbalance. So I want to talk about adrenal fatigue one more time. If when we looked at that picture and you saw all those symptoms and we talked about it, if you feel like you have adrenal fatigue in your body, You have to let your adrenals heal for 3 to 6 months, depending on how severe it is for you and your body, before you can start trying to push your body to lose weight. 20 minutes of cardio should be your max if you feel like you need to heal from adrenal fatigue, because it's after that 20 minutes of cardio that your adrenals start to produce cortisol. Your body starts to receive what's happening as a stressor. You must prioritize getting good quality sleep and having a circadian rhythm that makes sense with nature and us as mammals who are not nocturnal, and thinking about when we would go to bed if we didn't have this artificial lighting, and when we would wake up if we were having to hunt and gather and plan our days in that way. If you feel like you have exhausted adrenals, no fasting. No fasting when you have exhausted adrenals. And this is really a bottom line thing. If you feel like fasting would be a healthy tool for you to lose weight, then it's really important that you first let your adrenals heal, again, for that 3 to 6 months, and then learn how to do it in a way that honors your cycle and these rhythms. Less caffeine, and then creating pleasure. Because with stress, we've all heard about how having too much cortisol and stress in the system is a recipe for inflammation and disease, and how, too much stress is going to cause weight gain or cause us to hold on to weight. And so what we've learned, what science has proven to us, is that too much stress in the body sets up the stage for disease. So it makes perfect sense then, and why wouldn't it, that the opposite, creating feelings of joy and pleasure and ease and contentment, sets the stage for healing. It sets the opposite environment within your body, and it makes everything perfect for healing. So anti-stress equals healing. Create more pleasure, joy, relaxation, things that you like to do in your days. So we're going to talk now about these 5 daily habits, and all of this stuff is so similar. It's so basic. It's so just like get back to nature. There's not anything in here that's like going to probably be a super huge surprise to you guys. This is just like being grown-ups and learning how to take really, really good care of our bodies. So here's your 5 things. Write these down. The number 1 thing to do for hormonal balance is get 7 to 9 hours of sleep during the hours of darkness, in between the hours of sunrise and sunset, or sunset and sunrise, rather. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. is probably about optimal, but play with it. Get a 9-hour night of sleep and see how you feel. Get a 7-hour night of sleep and see how you feel. Find your ideal amount and prioritize that. No guilt. And be consistent with it. And this all, again, also supports the liver. Number 2, stress management. Balancing things in your week and in your month in a way that there aren't going to be certain days or certain weeks where you have totally overloaded yourself and you experience a lot of stress inside your body. Create pleasure. Make time for things that are pleasurable to you. Give yourself the permission to do it, even if you are going away from your family for a little bit, or it feels a little bit selfish. You're going to have better health for it. It's not selfish. Let your adrenals rest from making cortisol. So identify those things in your life that are really causing stress, and maybe you can't eliminate all of them, but eliminate what you can, better balance what you can, and add some things in that throw it in the other direction, that create that joy and pleasure. So slow down. And then think again, we're feminine, we're women. We don't need to be in this constant masculine productivity, get things done mode. And we're going to talk about that again with the cycle, but we can be feminine. We can let ourselves ebb and flow with these ups and downs in our cycle. And on the days when we're having our period or getting close to it and we feel more tired, we can rest a little bit. And on those days surrounding ovulation, this is a good time to load your schedule up with your to-do list and get things done, because your energy's there for it. Try to cross everything off before you get to your period. Let your rest. So circadian rhythm, stress management. With stress management, again, that's really important, is to create and schedule downtime cyclically. So I really recommend doing that around your period. Schedule 3 days where you're not going to be doing a bunch of things, or where you say no to everything that you can say no to. Number 3, eat regular meals starting with breakfast. So have breakfast in the morning within an hour and a half of waking up. And do not have any caffeine on an empty stomach. That's a really big one. These are kind of your basic rules for eating for blood sugar. If you start in the morning with breakfast, your body's going to give you the cues for the rest of the day to get hungry in the proper times, if you're listening. If you're really busy and you get out of touch with your body, I have some instructions to make it a little bit more foolproof. I'll share at the end. Don't be afraid of healthy fat with this eating regular meals, women. We need healthy fat for all of these processes within our cycle. And never eat a carb alone. That's a good one to write down. This really helps with keeping your blood sugar stable, is that if you're going to have some fruit or some good quality bread or some good quality crackers or a carb of any kind, pair it with some healthy fat. Your body metabolizes fat more slowly. It's a slow burning fuel, whereas the carbs are fast burning fuels. So if you mix them together, your body's going to have a slower time separating out those carbs to turn into glucose. And it's going to have a longer, a less subtle rise in your blood sugar. And you're going to stay full for longer and get less of a dip in blood sugar later. And with that, because that's number 3, I am going to share my screen and show you guys my eating instructions for stable blood sugar, energy, and weight loss. And I know this is really small, so I'm not going to keep it up for very long here. I'm actually just going to have it here for a second and give you the opportunity to take a picture of the screen if you want to be able to come back to this and read this in a little bit more detail. It's a lot. I'm not going to read it all over right now. This is tip number 3 for supporting stable balanced hormones, is eat in a similar way to this. So it's breakfast, lunch, a snack, and dinner. You're eating about every 3 hours, and you're finishing dinner. So it's super key thing, finishing dinner within 2 to 4 hours of bed, so that you're not going to bed with a bunch of food in your stomach. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to take this down. You guys can always email me if you needed that and you didn't get a chance to get it. Number 4 is support your liver and detox your body regularly through movement and sweat. And so exercise, sweating, yoga, running, biking, hiking, going to the playground and doing the monkey bars, getting on the treadmill, whatever it is, any type of movement, dancing. But some other things that help to support your detoxification systems that are not exercise and movement are massage, hot towel scrubbing or dry brushing, Epsom salt baths for the magnesium. Magnesium really energetically is the mineral of letting go, helps you with letting go of your anxieties, getting sleep, letting go of muscle tension, and detoxifying, letting go of all that stuff in there that's not serving you anymore. Brassica vegetables, cauliflower, broccoli, all types of kale, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, and dark leafy greens, and citrus fruits, so lemons and limes and oranges. These are all foods that really bolster up your liver function. And then I'm going to tell you a little secret right here. We're going to come over, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to come back to this chart here of all these flowing hormones. And to kind of go back to this supporting your liver, what I want to really highlight is that right after you have your period, in your follicular phase and in your ovulatory phase, your body actually has a lower temperature and a slower metabolism, meaning that you have a lower caloric need for about 2 weeks here following your period. What this also means is that your appetite naturally is going to be much lighter. And then remember what I said about how this is the time when you're creating estrogen on the rise. This is the time of the month that you really want to support your liver in functioning really well to be clearing out estrogen just as quickly as you are creating it. So based on that information, after you've had your period for the first 2 weeks of your cycle, to really, really support your body in clearing out excess estrogen, you want to eat light and take advantage of having a lower appetite and cravings for fresher, lighter foods. This is the time of the month to load up on smoothies and salads and raw fruits and vegetables that really get your liver going. And it's easy to do so. Most of the time, you're not going to experience a lot of mental resistance to eating this way during this part of your cycle because you naturally need less calories. Once you get into your luteal phase, your body temperature rises and your metabolism rises, and you actually need 200 to 300 calories more per day, and therefore your appetite raises and you want a little bit more food. So this is not the time of the month to try to cut calories or to try to eat less. This is the time of the month to stay on top of regular meals. So with that, my point in number 4, supporting the liver in detoxing, is to really focus on a liver supporting diet during the first 2 weeks of your cycle. Eat fresh, eat raw, eat less meals, stop when you're full or even a couple bites before you're full, and your liver will just work. It'll just work, get that estrogen out. And you'll actually find that your PMS symptoms, as you get close to the very end of your cycle, are going to reflect how you did in the first week or 2 weeks of your cycle. Pretty interesting. And then number 5, the other thing that you can do to really support your body in hormonal imbalance is sync your life with your cycle. Sync your foods and your exercises as well as your lifestyle choices with these 4 phases of the cycle. And that's a huge recommendation for me to just give to you because I haven't really given you enough information in this masterclass to just walk away and do that. And so I'm going to give you a couple of resources if you want to dig in and learn more about that. If you want to write it down, the 2 books that I recommend that really go in depth on syncing your food, exercise, and life with your cycle are Elisa Vitti's books, both Woman Code and In the Flow. And then the other option is, of course, working with me and doing my 6-month program. I take 6 months to dive really deeply into these 3 systems, the blood sugar, adrenals, and organs of elimination, and learn about your life and what it looks like for you with your family, your budget, your job to support these systems. And then in the second half of the cycle, we look really deeply into these 4 phases, like much more in depth into these 4 phases and kind of like the really subtle shifts in energy, the specific foods to be eating, as well as the specific exercises that your body is prepped and good to do in each of these 4 phases. It kind of just, it's very intuitive. It's not hard for us to understand because we feel it in our body. It's kind of what you would expect during the time you're ovulating. When you're making all that testosterone and estrogen, you load up, you work out hard, you let yourself get sore and fatigue your muscles. And it's okay to do it again the next day and not take that recovery day. Your body can handle it. But then during your period, when all of your hormones are at a baseline, working out really hard and lifting weights is likely to cause muscle wasting and fat storage because you don't have the hormones on board to build that muscle. And so those are kind of like a little taste of how you sync your food and exercise with your cycle. And those are some things you can walk away and start implementing today. Okay. Do you guys have right now, before we start going into the birth control conversation, do you guys have any questions about these 5 recommendations that I've given you, as well as these 5 common lifestyle factors that can trigger hormonal imbalance? Is there anything that's come up? Anything at all? Don't be shy. There are no bad questions to ask. All right. You guys are awesome. So to talk a little bit about birth control, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go back to that little chart. So we talked already about how being on birth control, basically what happens is you go into a perpetual luteal phase. Your hormones are all the same, always, every single day. You miss out on the follicular phase of your cycle, and you miss out on the ovulatory phase. So now that we've learned all of these things, I'm going to come over here to these book excerpts. These are from the books Woman Code and In the Flow. So I'm going to read this out loud to you. I'm sorry if you hate story time. So this woman, she's all about birth control for the right reasons. And I am too. Bottom line, birth control has a purpose that's there, that's not terrible. But the issue is that it's not necessarily, it's causing longer term issues in a woman's body by preventing that pregnancy. And what she's highlighting here is how many people use it for reasons other than birth control. So the 31% menstrual pain or cramps, side effects of menstruation, acne, endometriosis. So the catch, birth control doesn't actually cure any of these conditions. It simply alters hormone levels to diminish or eliminate the symptoms. The underlying hormonal problem persists. And while on the pill, you may very well be able to go about your life without having any of these symptoms crop up. However, if you decide to become pregnant and go off the pill, you might find that your fertility has been affected, or that these symptoms just come back. And the longer a hormonal problem exists, the more complicated it is to treat. So I'm not going to go into that one anymore. I'm going to come over to this one, which talks about cycle syncing if you're on the pill. I don't want to go into that so much, but I want to, again, kind of highlight how you lose some of those phases of your cycle. So hormonal contraception shuts down the processes that occur in your 4 phases. Specifically, you don't have a follicular phase, and you don't ovulate. When you're on the pill, synthetic hormones biochemically trick the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and ovaries into thinking you're pregnant. As a result, you don't have most of the body cues, such as changes in cervical fluid, that a woman not on the pill would have. And then, yep, that's that. And then here, coming on to this one, I'm going to move this over here, maybe. There we go. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of this, but there's a couple things that I want to highlight. So she likens using birth control for different symptoms as using a Band-Aid to cover a deep wound that needs stitching. And she writes, it simply masks the symptoms associated with conditions like estrogen dominance, PMS, PCOS, endometriosis, and fibroids. Gynecologists routinely prescribe synthetic birth control to treat or manage these conditions as if it were a magic pill. So what happens here is these synthetic hormones hijack the 4 phases of your cycle. Combinations of estrogen and progestin, a synthetic form of progesterone, interfere with your body's natural processes. They fool the brain so that the hypothalamus never signals the pituitary gland to secrete luteinizing hormone or follicle stimulating hormone, prevents the follicles from swelling to mature the eggs that they contain. And the steady levels of these synthetic hormones delivered by the pill thwart the natural mid-cycle surge in estrogen that typically kickstart the release of the egg. So there is no ovulation. In the unlikely event that the egg manages to be released in spite of all of this, its chances of being fertilized are slim because the synthetic progestin also thickens the mucus of the cervix, creating a sort of barrier that makes it harder for sperm to swim to the egg. In addition, unlike natural progesterone, which maintains the thickened lining of the uterus, progestin does the opposite. It thins the uterine lining so that if an egg is fertilized, the lining might be too thin for it to remain in the uterus and it will be shed when the bleeding occurs. And the birth control pills that mimic the monthly cycle, it is not a period because there was no ovulation. So it kind of mimics a period and makes you feel like you're having your period, but it's not a real period. It's an artificial pattern. And she writes, gone are the natural rise and fall of estrogen and progesterone. And in its place, you have a static dose of synthetic hormones that kind of keep you stuck in this phaseless, no cycle land where you're the same every day. And we sometimes feel like that's great. We can be more productive. We don't have to deal with the inconsistencies and unpredictability of having this monthly cycle. But as I described, those fluctuations in the hormone all together over the course of a month create the whole feminine experience and bring out your creative side in the beginning, your extroverted side that wants to be out and about and socialize and show off all of your beautiful gifts and passions. And then towards the end of the cycle, the part of us is expressed that is more nurturing and womanly. And if you think also about how I explained that we have that lower caloric need in the beginning and that higher caloric need in the end. What that means is that by taking birth control and putting yourself into this perpetual luteal phase, you're missing out on that time of the month when you need less calories and you naturally have a lighter appetite, which means that you put yourself in a perpetual phase of having that higher appetite and that desire for the 200 to 300 extra cravings per day. And you lose that part where it's easy and feels natural to eat light and fresh. So these are kind of my different things to be aware of when you're choosing birth control for yourself or not, is that there's pros and cons, obviously, to any situation, but kind of just looking at the fullness of the menstrual cycle and asking yourself if it's okay with you to sacrifice some of those things that we gain from having a full feminine monthly cycle. And if it sounds like, well, how do I not get pregnant? My last resource to share with you, aside from working with me, is the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Wechsler. And in this book, she teaches you how to observe all of your monthly hormonal indicators that show you where you are in your cycle, including taking your temperatures so that you can actually start to learn the exact day you ovulate. And you can learn a pretty foolproof way as long as you're honest with yourself and can stay in touch with these systems to protect yourself from getting pregnant without using birth control options. And it's something that I work with women in my 6-month program with. If they're interested and curious about learning how to take their temperatures and observe these fertility signs and use this as a natural form of birth control, I help women to kind of figure that out and start implementing it in their life. So I don't know if any of you guys are interested in asking questions or sharing experiences or opinions or whatever it is about birth control and your personal experience or your personal hangups. But I do want to open up the conversation to you guys because so much of the time your story or your experience can be really healing or helpful to someone else. If any of you have something that you're willing to share, or if there's some things I'm saying here that just like, you're like, I can't understand how I would change this in my own life. please feel free to ask questions, anything at all about birth control.
I'll speak about it.
Let's hear it, Natalie. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. I got on birth control in high school and stayed on it for until I was about 32, I think, 33, 32, somewhere in there. I'm 34 now. So it was about 33 actually when I got off of it. And I was always kind of curious because I got on birth control because I didn't want to get pregnant. So that was my biggest thing in my head, was like, I don't want to ever have that happen, especially when I was young and whatnot. And so that was my main motivation. But I definitely got sold on the idea that, like, oh, your periods will be easier and you won't have acne and things like that. And it sounded all like a positive thing. And it's interesting because since I got on it when I was like 17 to 33, it's like, I don't know how much of, I don't know, just the experience is lost in there because I didn't know. I was just on the same stickler phase. And yeah, it's just interesting because I've gotten off of it, and it's been interesting to see the changes since I've gotten off of it. I was so unaware of my cycle before that, and it was just funny too, because my period is so much better actually now that I'm not on birth control. And that was one of the things that I always thought. I was really afraid to get off birth control because I thought that my period would be terrible and I'd have it for, a month straight and all these different things that sounded scary, but it wasn't actually that case. But yeah, I don't want to like talk for too long or anything. It was just really interesting to watch and examine my body going out of birth control and being on hormones, for over a decade, and seeing how I can experience things on a little more of a real level, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is with that experience of being on it for so long and now being off of it, is do you identify with some of the things that I'm saying? And do you feel more connected, like, to you as a full expression of yourself?
Most definitely. I had a really interesting time. Like, the first month or so, it was a little bit difficult. Just some things, like, I don't think I had ever really experienced acne before or things like that. But I did kind of experience it after getting off birth control. Nothing too crazy, but just nothing I was used to. And it talked about how, like, I, did some research on that, and it was saying that, this is all the stuff leaving your body that you've been putting into your body for however long. So your body does kind of have to detox and go through a natural thing with that. So I definitely did realize that there was something that was just kind of like a leveling out with being on birth control. And now I'm experiencing more of the cycles and whatnot. And it just feels a little more true. I don't know. True to me, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's really great to hear. And yes, the skin, I didn't go a lot into the lymphatic system when talking about the organs of elimination, but your lymphatic fluid, which is just underneath your skin, is going to take on a lot of the detoxification that your liver isn't handling. And then what we don't realize is that our skin is our largest organ of elimination. And having these consistent skin issues can be an indicator that your body's clearing things out and the liver's working extra hard to get things cleared out, and then to kind of watch your body process through that and then move past the acne. It's great that your body got back into balance really quickly and without a lot of needing a lot of extra help. That's really awesome. I'm glad for you that you're now feeling more true and real to yourself. Thanks so much for sharing.
Of course, yeah.
Anybody else have story, experience, questions about that birth control? Yeah, Kirsten.
So I have questions, and I'm probably in a different place in my cycle of life than some of the other women here. So I will be 45 at the beginning of June, and I'm experiencing more things related to what I would think is perimenopause. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I be balanced in this state? So I haven't had any hormonal birth control for the last almost 10 years. And so I'm really familiar with my cycle. And some of these things do apply to me when I'm thinking about, oh yeah, sometimes I just skip a meal and I don't mean to, but I go a long time without eating. And then I'm just super, super hungry. Or the value of doing a liver cleanse. And exercising less than I used to. So there's some things that I can work with and tweak. But also I'm just noticing that for myself, I'm feeling confused about like, okay, well, why am I having these headaches before my period? So some months are okay still, some months are not. Then I'm experiencing night sweats periodically. So I'm kind of in this weird place where it's hard to determine what's going on, and wanting to figure out how to dial it in so it feels more manageable like it has in the past.
Yes. So the headaches and the night sweats both can also be connected to that estrogen dominance. And I will fully admit that I am not as experienced or educated with what happens just before, during, and after menopause as I am what's happening in the active reproductive years. But I have learned that those headaches that happen right before the period, those are related to some excess estrogen in the system. And then the night sweats, waking up, sweating, this is like so indicative of the liver overworking, because that sweating is your detoxification process and your liver goes through its cleanse cycle at about 3 a.m. And so if these are things that you are dealing with, my off the cuff reaction would be to focus on the liver and to specifically focus on the liver mid-cycle, around the time that you're ovulating. And now I don't know, because you say you're perimenopause, if these cycles are still about 28 days or if they're starting to lengthen out. So if they're still about 28 days apart and you're still cycling regularly, I would really think a little bit of estrogen dominance and supporting the liver, and maybe even playing around with, in those first week or the first week or two of your cycle leading up to ovulation, getting a lot of raw, like the smoothies with the raw dark leafy greens, and maybe even playing around with some amount of fasting or intermittent fasting, but doing it in an intelligent way based off of this information, like maybe having breakfast and a midday big meal, but a really early dinner, maybe stopping your food at like 4 p.m. so that you can have the whole entire evening for your liver and your detoxification organs to just work and get out the old and not add any extra burden onto them. Do those things make sense, and are those helpful?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I have kind of had someone else who I trust talk to me about supporting my liver right now in particular, and focusing on liver cleanse. And with family though, it does seem challenging for, when we're having meals at 6:30 or 7 after, sometimes 7:30 after sports or whatnot, that it's like, oh no, I'm going to sit this one out. That will be a weird thing for myself and my family, but I could certainly give it a try. And I haven't necessarily been paying close attention to the way I'm eating in the first 2 weeks. I just sort of follow, like, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling like this feels nourishing. And so naturally, sometimes it is lighter, but then there's other times when it's like, I don't really know what I want. And so then I don't feed myself well. And those might be happening at times when I really need to focus on being regular with taking in food.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Good. And thanks for sharing that experience as well, because I love learning. I want to learn more about the getting closer to menopause. I do think that one thing I've observed from working with now more than 40 women in a variety of ages, some of them post-menopause, some of them in menopause, some of them spending all of their cyclical years on birth control, some of them having hysterectomies or partial hysterectomies, that it seems like what I'm observing is the way you go through menopause is pretty determined by the way you went through your cyclical years. And so the women who were on birth control for longer periods of time or who dealt with these enduring hormonal imbalances have a lot harder and more turbulent time going through those menopause years, whereas women who have stayed off the hormonal birth control and supported their bodies well, maybe they have that frustrating 10 pounds or these little less significant symptoms, but their bodies seem to know what to do and go through that process without quite so many symptoms. Okay, does anyone, yes, go, oh yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone else have anything else with the birth control? Anyone else have thoughts or questions or anything that came up from listening to those two share their experience? And then I just want to double check, make sure everybody who wants to be included in the drawing has wrote in the chat box me that you're interested, say yes or say me, and I will make sure that your name is in. And if I'm saying your name, so I just have right now, I just have Kirsten and Rochelle wanting to be in the drawing. Is there anyone else who wants to be in the drawing? You can give me a thumbs up. You can say yes, put me in there, say me in the chat box. Okay, McKenna, I see you, and Amanda. Amanda, let me just check. Yes, okay, so Amanda and McKenna, let me put you guys in here. And Natalie. Yay. And I'll do it so you guys can see I'm not cheating. Okay, so confirming Kim. Kim does not want to be in, just making sure that's correct. Type in if I'm wrong and you do want to be in here. And I'm going to, before I do this, I'm going to share my pricing. Got off track there for a minute. Super exciting to draw a name out of the hat. Okay, so the pricing is, and just if you guys hear this pricing and you realize you don't want to get half off, that's fine. You can withdraw your name. So my 6-month program full pricing is $2,010. And the payment plan options that I have currently are a 6-month or a 12-month option. And there's not any, it doesn't change the price. You don't get a discount if you pay in full. It's just $2,010. That's the total. So that can be made in either 6 payments of $335 or 12 payments of $167.50. So if you were to win half off a 6-month program, I ask that you get started with it within 6 months of this masterclass, hopefully sooner. And if you win half off of the program, it would be a 6-month payment plan. We wouldn't go to smaller payments with 12 months. It would be 6 payments of that $167.50. And I also want to let you guys know that if my pricing changes, once I've quoted you a price, you can keep that price. So if any of you guys hear this price and a year down the road, you realize you want to work with me, but my pricing has changed, I will honor the price that I originally quoted you. Okay, I'm going to draw a name here, double checking that everyone's in. Yep, okay, here we go. Mixing them around, mixing them up. They're all in there. Okay, I've got one in my hand. Let's see who it is. It's Natalie. Natalie has won the drawing of winning half off a 6-month program. And go ahead and take 24 hours to think about that. If you change your mind, let me know, and I'll redo this drawing with all of the other names. I would absolutely love to work with you. And if you're into it and you want to do that, then I will connect with you tonight or tomorrow, and we can talk about setting up that first appointment, which would just start with a consultation where I would get to know you in a little bit more depth, where you're wanting to go with this, what your goals are, and kind of what you're wanting to specifically work towards. And for the rest of you, I have some availability in my schedule. If any of the rest of you are interested in having a consultation with me, my consultations are always free. I will never pressure you to spend money that you don't want or have to spend, or to join my program if it doesn't feel right for you. And I'm all about deeply serving the clients who do work with me and really helping them to get the answers that they're looking for, get to the root of the issues that they're dealing with. This free masterclass was so surface level. It's hard to even cover all of the information that I want to in an hour and a half. So when we do the 6-month program, we have 12 sessions that are an hour long like this, where we get really in depth with all of these things. And some of my clients work alongside me with their naturopath or with their endocrinologist. And so the stuff that I'm talking about it's really lined up with stuff that works, and it's sourceable and it's citable. If you guys want any more of the stuff that I cited here, or if you want me to forward you any of the things that I shared, feel free to email me and ask for them. And then I want to let you know that I'm going to do this drawing every time I have a free masterclass, at least this year. I'll reevaluate next year and see how things are going, but I'm planning on doing these free masterclasses once per quarter. So there'll be another one in a couple months, and then another one in a couple months again. And if something that interests you to try to win that half off, then just keep coming. I do have a pro bono application. I've already done my pro bono client for the year, but I will accept a new pro bono client once per year. If that's something that would help you, there's an application on my website. Let's see. I don't think that there's anything else I need to share with you guys. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to end with, or comments, or anything at all? Thank you guys all so much for coming. It was really good to see your faces and your names. If you didn't show your face, that's okay too. Thank you to those of you who shared. I hope that this stuff was helpful to you, and that you were able to pull some things from this that you can apply to your life and start improving things now. You're welcome, Carly. Thank you guys, and have a really good night. Thank you all. You're so wonderful. Ending the call. Talk to you guys later.